Margaret. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call this meeting of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County Joint Powers Authority Legislative Action Committee to order. If I could have a roll call.
Sure. Ann Bybee. Present. Kitty Moore.
Here.
Greg Boswell.
Here.
Pete Daly. Kavita Tonka. Rob Moore.
Here.
Carmen Montano. Here. Javed Elahi. Mark Turner. Ellen Kamei or Chris Clark. In lieu of Ed Lowing, Greer Stone.
Here.
George Casey.
Here.
Kelly Cox. Tina Walia.
Here.
Alyssa Cisneros. Okay. With 8 people, we have 4.
Excellent. Absent any objection, I would like to reorder the agenda so that our guest speaker, Assemblymember Patrick Ahrens, can go first because he has a rather heavy calendar today and needs to get along to his next event as well. We are very, very grateful that he's able to make the time to be here today. Assemblymember Ahrens is, I think, very, very well known to most of the people in this room and across the West Valley, which comprises many of the cities in the Cities Association, in particular because he was the district director under his predecessor, Evan Lowe. With that, Assemblymember Ahrens, if you'd like to give us a little bit about yourself and your legislative priorities for the coming year.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, JR. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come on and say a few words. Hi, Ellen. It's great to see so many familiar faces back home. It's been a rather unconventional start to the legislature, even even on a normal day, it's been a lot, but we've been dealing with the threats of an increasingly volatile federal government. We have been dealing with our wildfires in Southern California. One of the first bills that I voted on was to provide a $2.5 billion relief package for folks affected by the fire and the mitigation, the toxic cleanup, to get people's homes rebuilt. It's been a lot. If anyone hasn't been down there, I've gotten a chance to go down, and the destruction is pretty unimaginable. There's anywhere from 10 to 15,000 structures destroyed and over $80 billion worth of damages so far. So that will probably be something that I'm going to be working on for my entire tenure in the legislature, is working on how to best support those who are affected by climate change and our wildfires specifically, and will continue to be an ongoing issue, unfortunately, in the future. I'm also proud to say that I've introduced a flurry of bill packages. I think given my experience as a staffer, I've introduced the most bills out of any freshman, which is driving my staff crazy. But we've been very productive. Most of our bill package focuses on anti-poverty legislation. I have a bill to increase the California Earned Income Tax Credit for low-income Californians to $300. I have a bill to increase the College Promise program from full-time students to part-time students. The vast majority of our community college students are part-time, and so this would offer free college tuition and free up needed funds on the local level for our gem of community colleges across the state of California. I've centered a lot of my work at the community college level on removing barriers to higher education, and so I'm really focused on prioritizing and doing that as well. I've got a bill to help incarcerated youth navigate the higher education system. Right now, for youth who are incarcerated after they can't they're not eligible to apply for any aid or help, and my bill would allow for the probation officer to act on their behalf to give them an education plan and a financial aid plan so that by the time that they are released from custody that they have a broad protection and package of financial help, and they're able to apply for college or emancipate from their parents if that's their situation, or apply to get their GED, or whatever the case may be, to give them an opportunity rather than, $50 in a bus pass, which is what the state of California has given historically in the past. So that's really kind of my theme, is focusing on affordability. The Speaker of the legislature has made it very clear that the legislature must focus on affordability. And I believe that in our region, I don't have to tell any of you all that, because we feel the affordability crisis more so than anywhere else in California. We've been feeling it for a long time, and I'm really committed to focusing on doing as much as I can to help Silicon Valley and get the rest of my colleagues to realize the cost of living is acutely affected in our region. Historically, there have been grants given to cities in Silicon Valley for special projects. I serve on the budget committee, and I'm hopeful that I can try to secure funding back home for needed projects. I also serve on the transportation committee, so I'll definitely be leaning on many of you all who are really liaisons to VTA and our other 26 or so transportation agencies in the Bay Area for any recommendations, guidance, and help to navigate how we get more increased funding, but improve our efficiencies for our transportation network. I also have been appointed to the Rules Committee, as well as the Communications and Conveyance and Business and Professions Committee, chaired by our own Assembly Member, Mark Berman. And so there's a lot of work to do. I've also been appointed to the Jewish Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, the Bay Area Caucus, and I'm co-chair of the Technology and Innovation Caucus. I'm going to be leading a delegation of our freshman legislators on a technology tour of my district and the surrounding Silicon Valley region. With many of the freshmen, I almost have full participation. So we're going to be planning to visit Apple, Google, Facebook, several other tech companies to talk to the legislature, particularly the freshman legislators, on the importance of our region, the importance of the industry's engagement and supporting and helping with economic relief for our valley. And I would love an opportunity to invite you all on that tech tour so you can also talk directly to the legislators as well as the technology industry leaders on what we can be doing more to support our cities and our communities, because we all have been operating far too long in silos in terms of how our companies and industry operate, how the state legislature operates, and how much our cities are sort of left in needing our help. And so that is really what I'm dedicated to doing. Would love to learn more about your legislative priorities and if I can be of help there. Many of you all have heard about or attended my Policy and Pancakes event, which we had about a few hundred folks attend. I'm really grateful for. We had over 300 bill idea submissions that I'll be choosing from. But many of you have my cell phone number. If not, Shelley, if you want to please share that with anyone who doesn't have it, or JR, I'd be happy to schedule a meeting with any one of you to talk to you, regardless of whether you live in my district or not, to see what we can do to continue to focus on the affordability theme that the legislature is committed to doing. There's many, many bills that are going to be on the docket to address the high utility bills that we're facing, to address our ongoing housing discussions. And I'm all ears, would love to hear more about it. The issues that you all are currently facing that are acute to your areas. I will say that I am up to about 17 bills that I'll be happy to share with you all once the bill package is finalized. But the bill deadline is coming up soon. And so if you all have any that you don't see conversations happening in the state legislature, would love to engage with you on those topics. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you. Do you have a few moments for questions?
I will always have a few. Yes, no worries. Just as long as they're softballs.
Does anyone have any questions for Assemblymember Aaron's? You,
Sure, thanks. Assemblymember Aaron's, thank you so much for giving us an overview of all the incredible work that you have already started. One of the things you touched upon toward the end, the high utility bills being an issue. And since you offered that you're willing to work with people even outside your assembly district, I just want to bring to your attention that all the cities are hurting on this issue. It is not just what we typically call an affordability issue. And so for that, I would love to talk with you whenever you have time. You have my number, 5 minutes, just to give you insights into what is happening in my city. And it would be great if you could get some change happening in Sacramento to support everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely. There are several bills that are going to be discussed to address the high utility bills, anywhere from CPUC governance reform to the rate hikes. There's a lot of conversations regarding the increases in utilities, including cap and trade reauthorization is up this year, and there's conversations about getting utility relief there. I do want to give a special shout out to the city of Santa Clara, who has on average 50% less utility bill rates than PG&E. But I also want to acknowledge the incredible work that Silicon Valley Clean Energy and many of the folks who are in the room with you now who've committed to finding innovative ways to get our power from clean energy sources. I believe the city of Palo Alto also has really great utility rates from their model as well. So I think we have a lot to learn from city-owned utility organizations and ideas that could become law if we acutely focus on them. So I'll be sure to have my office follow up with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate that. The other thing I would like to add there in the utilities, and thank you, I should have introduced myself, but you know me. So Tina Walia, for those who know, City of Saratoga Council member. So in the utilities, I would also like you to consider the challenges with water. Just mentioning that in addition.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I always appreciate the shout out for SVCE, always. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
any other questions from? Yeah.
Good to see you, Assemblymember. Javed Dalai, City of Montecito, Vice Mayor.
Hi.
I guess one thing on the tip of most of us is the fire safety issues and what's going on. Something that the fire safety is two things. One is obviously the fire issues and making sure that we can respond to that. And the other major issue is the exit issue. Because in small places like Saratoga, Los Gatos, Montecito, there's only one freeway and it's jammed on normal day weekday traffic anyway. I'm wondering if any attention is being paid in the assembly to help with alleviating those situations. One issue we're faced on is trees. Like some trees are more vulnerable to fire. A lot of them are on Highway 9. We have no jurisdiction to cut them down. Only the state has jurisdiction to do that. I'm wondering if we can if you guys can look at that and see how we can eliminate that. And then the broader issue is to try to find more exit routes so that we're not stuck with just one route.
Absolutely. No, thank you for bringing that issue up. I mean, it was an ongoing issue when I was a staffer for Assemblymember Lowe when we represented the city of Monte Sereno for and the town of Los Gatos for 8 years, and beach traffic, emergency pathways and exits through 17, Highway 9, one way in and one way out. Many of these communities were a growing concern, not only for wildfires, but for earthquake safety. And we've talked at length to our tech companies to make sure they're not being rerouted to vulnerable areas where they may need for the beach traffic issue, as well as the fire safety issues. I will say that the silver lining in a lot of these wildfire discussions is a recommitment by the legislature and the governor to focus on wildfire mitigation, treatment, and funding. And there have been many discussions about us re-upping our commitment to helping our cities and counties and towns on addressing the debris cleanup that you mentioned, whether it be cap and trade reauthorization or the general fund or Prop $4. There are several buckets to combat and address wildfire mitigation funds for debris cleanup in our county and state property. And so I'll be sure to have my office follow up with you on some of those conversations. There will be opportunities to engage in and sending letters of support in our region, our areas. A lot of the issues that I'm seeing right now with a lot of those conversations are sort of a bias in our area, that many people feel like we're all doing fine and we don't need extra help or funds because we're from Silicon Valley, which, as you all know, there are needs in every community, and we don't have the funds to address these issues. And many of these areas, as you mentioned, are in state or county property. And so there is certainly a recommitment in several different funds to address the issues that you raised, and we'll be sure to follow up.
Thank you. And just to point out one thing on the utilities, if you can get them to underground it, I know the bills are high as it is, but it seems like every time there's a fire, a spark, has done it. And grounding utilities would really be helpful.
Grounding utilities are extremely effective. They're also extremely expensive. And so I have reminded our freshman college colleagues of our oversight authority when it comes to these issues, and we'll be sure to be continuing pushing for undergrounding of our utility lines.
Thank you.
About how much time would you say that you have left?
I think I can do one or two more questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Why don't you piggyback first?
Thank you. Very quickly, Assemblymember Tina, again, I want to piggyback on what Javed, Vice Mayor from Montessorino was saying. So you are very familiar with Saratoga. More than half of my city is in fire hazard zone state maps. And when you talk about the expenses, the affordability, even on private property to clear, is not there. People don't have the money. And on top of it, just keep in mind the home insurance situation with whatever we are reading right now with the fair price model as well. Just keep those in mind. My city is deeply hurt. And the assumption when you touched upon the assumption in Sacramento being that Silicon Valley has the financial resources, even in Saratoga, we have neither the city resources, you're very familiar with this, nor the private resources. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for flagging that. I mean, many of you saw that the FAIR plan is coming to ask for a $1 billion increase. Yep. And as many of you know, the FAIR plan doesn't cover 100%. And our region, Saratoga, the town of Los Gatos, Montessorino, the Cupertino foothills, many people have had their coverage dropped or their premiums already triple and quadruple. And it's, there is a lot of mess for the legislature to clean up when it comes to our insurance market and the things that we need to be addressing. I have been briefed by our insurance commissioner on these issues. I'm continuing to meet with our insurance industry as well as assembly leadership on our oversight authority and creative solutions, so that many of this isn't being bought out on the backs of our homeowners, because as you all know, this is only going to make things more expensive for our homeowners, or it's going to expose huge risk if dropped coverage continues in our vulnerable areas, because it's just going to get too expensive. Many people are aging in place, our seniors especially cannot afford this. And so our insurance market is a huge debacle and a huge issue that is being addressed in the legislature along with our wildfire mitigation efforts. And so those conversations are going hand in hand.
Thank you.
Thank
If you
you.
have time for one last one, this one will hopefully be a little bit quicker. You're at the very beginning of a 2-year legislative cycle. And certainly a lot of your time right now is being consumed with issues involving the fires in Southern California and the state's response to changes in the position of the federal government with regard to our relationship to them. So I'm just curious as to what you see as potential 2-year bills that maybe this year might not make it all the way through, but that you think you can get across the finish line by the end of next year.
Well, some of my bills are more practical and some of my bills are aspirational. And in terms of the efforts that we are looking at in regards to the federal government, there is deep concern about the Trump administration and their actions over the last month and a half or so. What I will say is what I've made very clear to my colleagues in the legislature is when it comes to the federal administration, we've allocated $50 million to the Department of Justice on increased lawsuits that we may be anticipating. The state of California has already begun lawsuits. Back in Trump 1.0, during his first term, the state of California sued the Trump administration over 100 times, and the state of California won 2/3 of the lawsuits that they presented in court. And so, but what I've made very clear to the media that I've interviewed with, as well as the people back at home and my colleagues in the legislature, I do not want to come to the legislature to sue the president and his administration because I disagree with him or because I didn't vote for him. If he does things that are lawful with the majority in the Senate and the Congress and his office, then there's nothing I can do. But the state of California needs to step up if we see illegal actions be taken, which we have seen with freezing of federal funds, with the dismantling of departments that the Congress, who has the power of the purse, has appropriated, or with the attacks on birthright citizenship. And so, again, I don't care who anyone voted for. If he does things lawfully, we should not sue him. This allocation on behalf of the state of California is only made if he does things that are illegal, which he has already begun to do. And so my biggest worry is how the state of California needs to be on guard to backfilling continual freezes of federal aid that we have already been allocated and anticipated for. That deeply concerns me, many of which our county of Santa Clara relies on to help some of our most vulnerable people. And, some of the transportation contracts are very needed, but there are some real life or death programs that the county delivers. And so the state of California is prepared to defend those rightful funds. Many of you know California is a donor state. We pay as much as, there was a recent study, $80 billion a year we contribute to the federal government. That's 80 billion a year that we could be getting back, but we send it to the federal government because of our wonderful republic. But that being said, when we go and need help for wildfire relief, whether it be in Silicon Valley or Southern California, whether we need help to help our most vulnerable population in Silicon Valley, or any other federal transportation dollars and anywhere in between, please remember that we send $80 billion a year to the federal government that we don't get to help other states and to help the federal system. And so I will be wholly supportive of supporting the Department of Justice under our Attorney General and ensuring that we are going to be getting the federal funds that are promised to us. And that's going to take up, unfortunately, an inordinate amount of time in the legislature in this next year. But we have to be prepared to stand up and fight back for those things. Again, not because we don't like him or I don't like him, but because we want to do and follow the law to protect communities back at home.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member. We'll let you get along to your next event and very much appreciate your joining us today.
Thank you all so much. I miss you all. And I will have I have a St. Patrick's Day event that I will be inviting you all to. So stay tuned.
I think your staff are out ahead of you on that one. I got the invitation today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much, and keep on doing the good work back at home. And if I could be of any assistance, I already have several homework assignments from some of you, but I'll be following up with all of those in the coming weeks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie and JR. I'm Assembly Member Aaron's District Director. I'll share my email. So if there's any additional follow-up that you wanted to, I would say, pursue with Assembly Member Aaron's, please keep me in the loop, and we'll make sure that happens. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I have the email address.
Yes.
So I can show.
Excellent. All right. Well, returning to regular order, then we'll go on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for those people who would like to address the Legislative Action Committee on any matter that is not on our agenda. State law will ordinarily prohibit the committee from discussing or taking action on non-agendized items. Do we have any of the members of the public who would like to speak?
Not online.
Seeing none in the room, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Through the chair, if I may, after roll call was taken, I want to just mention to anyone online or for record that Mayor Alan Kamei and Vice Mayor Javed Lakhmi came right after that. I'm sure you jotted that down. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We have only one item on the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting of November the 14th of 2024. I realize we have a rather small quorum today. It is not necessary for you to have been at that meeting for you to weigh in on the minutes. If they appear to reflect accurately what occurred at that meeting, you can feel free to vote on the item. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So,
So this,
yep, and we'll have to take public comment. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on the consent agenda?
none online.
Not online, and I see none in the room. If you'd like to take a roll call vote.
Roll call or just- Oh, we have to do roll call because we got members online. Okay, yeah. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented by Walia, second by Alaki. Oops, sorry, by Moore, excuse me. I'm gonna call you in the order of the city. Campbell.
Aye.
Cupertino,
Abstain?
Gilroy,
Abstain.
Los Altos is not here, Los Altos Hills is not here, Los Gatos,
Yes.
Milpitas,
Yes.
Monte Sereno,
Yes.
Mountain View,
Yes.
Morgan Hill is not here. Palo Alto,
Yes.
San Jose,
Abstain.
Santa Clara is not here. Saratoga,
Aye.
Sunnyvale is not here. So we have 1, 7. We have 3 abstentions and 7 aye.
We'll move on to item 2, introduction to the Legislative Action Committee. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is J.R. Crow. I am a council member in the city of Cupertino. However, you'll notice I was not voting on the consent agenda. I am appointed to this position by the board here at the Cities Association. We have a member from the city of Cupertino who will be voting on items that come before this body. The second vice president serves as the chair of the LAC ex officio. So I regard it as my job to try to move our meeting agendas along in a reasonably expeditious fashion and to facilitate a good conversation and exchange of ideas and to bring you good speakers and useful information as we weigh in on bills over the course of the year. Our general purpose is to convene as a body and discuss bills that would affect our jurisdictions that are moving through predominantly Sacramento, although that is not the only type of bill that we can weigh in on. We try to obtain various guest speakers on topics that are of interest and align with the board's priorities. And we then forward our recommendations along to the board itself to take the actual position. So the LAC does not take a specific position on any bill. It is the board that does so on behalf of the organization. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our most immediate past chair of this committee, Tina Walia from City of Saratoga, to discuss sort of how our process generally works and the lessons that she learned from her time here.
Thank you so much, JR, the current Legislative Action Committee Chair. It's an honor for me to give a brief overview of the process to those who are in the room. I think most of you know me. I have had the pleasure of working with you over the years in different capacities, whether at Cities Association or elsewhere. And most of you are also quite familiar with the process. But then I can see a couple of new faces as well as we all need a refresher. So I'm going to start by saying this is a very important role we have in our county and in other counties as well, to have the Cities Association of the county as well as the Legislative Action Committee. Very briefly, last year, 2024, as the LAC chair, what I felt was it was a very collaborative experience for me, as well as a very busy year for all of us. I'm going to start by touching upon the Cities Association JPA bylaws. They define the purpose of the Legislative Action Committee as threefold, and this is a direct quote. The first one, it talks about the committee would enable the agency to advocate on issues of interest to Santa Clara County cities in an organized, effective manner and assist in the development of statewide legislative policy through local and state government and Cal cities. I'm reading this with intention, even though I know our chair here has talked about that. With respect to this advocacy and policy development, the committee will submit its recommendations to the board of directors. If the board accepts a recommendation, the chair of the committee will transmit the agency's position to the appropriate official committee or policymaking body. I am quoting that from the bylaws just to make clear to all of us and a reminder that this is really the meat of what we do here. The second thing for the bylaws is the committee would provide basic legislative information to the cities with little or no legislatives upon request. Now, interestingly, Cities Association itself does not have much staff, less than each of the cities, including mine, which is, or Montesorinos. So this rarely gets used here. And the third one, according to the bylaws, the role of the committee, the chair of the committee, the Legislative Action Committee, and the board president may organize emergency responses to urgent legislative issues consistent with prior decisions made by the board of directors. Now, that's pretty important to keep in mind, consistent with prior decisions made by the board of directors. And I can share with you that last year with the then board president, Lisa Fleigel, who's sitting there right in the public right now, I did work with her on using that third option, keeping in line with the board position. So for now, the focus is really the first role that the committee has. The charter is to focus on the bills, measures, and propositions. And the committee chair chooses and agendizes these bills. Now, we know the legislature keeps very busy. And we just heard from Assembly Member Patrick Ahern's that he himself has already proposed a flurry of bills. Last year, as LAC chair, I had to choose bills from 2,000 plus bills. Clearly, we at LAC are not going to be able to discuss so many. So the LAC chair typically identifies a few bills based on the focus areas of the in alignment with the board priorities typically or of relevance to the cities. I want everyone to know there are checks and balances. The executive committee is a place where the LAC chair does present a tentative agenda. And so the board president, Mayor Klein, who's sitting in the back right now, is there. The immediate past board president, Lisa Fliger, is right there. And I am the current first vice president of the board, as well as the LAC chair. These are, plus Campbell, council member Elliot Scazola is a member of the executive committee. So there are other people who are looking at the agenda before it comes to the LAC. Typically, the LAC chair will also take some member input and align, as I mentioned earlier, with the board priorities to choose which bills are being discussed. Every LAC chair brings a unique perspective. And you know what? The beauty is at Santa Clara County, just like other counties, we are one large family and it all works fabulously well because we as a large family have to work well together. I have to say, we are very lucky to have J.R. Fruin as the LAC chair this year. His professional background is specifically in this area. And I do know for my success last year as LAC chair, he was one of the few persons that I could turn to behind the scenes for help. The other person, of course, is Lisa Fliger. That is what the strength we bring in working together here. So the LAC chair will be busy tracking the bills. And what has helped in the past, certainly helped me, was to send a blurb about the bills ahead of time so LAC members come prepared to discuss and vote on most of the bills. That keeps us all busy, but that's the way we can get through a larger volume of bills. Now, some cities in our county approach it in a manner where their city councils have to take a position. Other cities like mine will say this is an independent position taken by that specific council member representing the city at LAC. Doesn't have to align with the city's position. Then there are some LAC members who will abstain from voting at LAC unless their council has taken a formal position or have given them direction. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to keep in mind, this is one place where we can represent our residents. My vote here is a way for me to participate and be my residents' voice. So what I'm saying is, please find a way to make it work with your city's position, even if there has been no official position taken by your council. As JR mentioned earlier, the recommendation from LAC committee is only a recommendation to the city's association board. Our vote at LAC is a simple majority vote to recommend either supporting a bill. I'm just generally going to say bill. It means bills, measures, propositions, whatever. Whether we support or oppose, or sometimes we say support with amendments, or at other times we'll say oppose unless amended. Typically the same evening at 7 p.m., right after this meeting, the LAC chair presents the LAC recommendation to the city's association board. The board will then discuss and vote on each bill. That vote is the final cities association vote. And that is the voice of Santa Clara County. Based on that board vote, the LAC chair composes letters expressing the majority view with some contextual details in that letter. you know, I felt it was a big honor when last year I could sign those letters as the LAC chair along with the board chair, Lisa Flyger, because when those letters went to the relevant policymaking body, the first paragraph said, we are writing this letter on behalf of more than 1.8 million residents of Santa Clara County, representing 14 cities of the county. And this year, thank you, Mayor Botso from Gilroy. This year, Legislative Action Committee and the Cities Association Board President would be signing those letters on behalf of the complete family of Santa Clara County cities, all the 15 cities. And that is a very special moment because this is a powerful voice for all of us to present our positions. Last year's letters, I believe we took position letters on 14 bills. They are uploaded on Cities Association website, even though there's a lot of other stuff that the website needs where we are lagging behind. And we will catch up. As I said, we don't have much staff. So what is the benefit of sending these position letters? We get the attention of our state legislators. It can help them get the bills passed. Last year, we were very successful in supporting multiple bills on public safety that did get signed into law by Governor Newsom. That was huge. Even if the state legislature votes differently than what we advocated for, our early voice can influence changes in the bill language. And for sure, our state senators and assembly members, they listen and they know what's happening in their constituencies. It is all very valuable. In a couple of minutes, GR will go through the Legislative Action Committee calendar, which has already been approved by the Cities Association Board, the 2025 calendar, as well as he will talk about the Sacramento calendar, the legislative calendar for this year, and what his plans are, how to make that work the best for this committee. I know you will do great work. And as I said earlier, I'm here to support you in any way I can, but you come professionally qualified. This is what you do during your day job. And thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Shelley, if you could put up the calendar.
Could I just have a comment?
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. I think that should probably be framed and be available for everybody who comes next. It was very detailed. Thank you so much. I thought maybe we could keep track of something. I mean, we support a bunch of legislation or oppose them. Maybe at the end of the year, at the last meeting, we report back to the committee saying, here's 14 bills we supported. 5 got approved, and these are the guys, legislators who helped us. These are the legislators who didn't. And here's 9 that didn't get approved, or either they just went away because we were there about it. It might be helpful to get feedback on what effect our input had, if any. And it may not be because of our input that something happened, but it'd be good to know. Because if I could make a suggestion.
Thank you. Great suggestion. And I did part of that November 14th meeting, I believe, if we can get the video link uploaded there. I did present quite a bit of that. I'm happy to send you an email I'll find my notes.
Okay,
and
well, that's
send you
great.
an email.
That's fine. I think that's good.
So
Take a look at it.
It's a great suggestion.
I also have a question. So, how does the California League of Cities, do we ever have any contradictory, like they support something and we don't support something? How do we manage that?
It happens the way I handled it. I kept in mind what League of Cities was doing. In fact, their position letters were very helpful. It gave me perspective, their long-term view. They had people across the state, and I kept that in mind, and I tried to align that working with based on what Cities Association Board was doing and voting on. And again, I was very lucky to have board president Lisa Fiber that time. Again, with her background, she's been Black chair twice prior to that.
That's really helpful to have somebody in there, yeah. And they have, California League of Cities, they have all the manpower, womanpower and manpower to do all the research. We've done it. So
Yes.
that's great.
At times, I even reached out to their lobbyists who were very helpful to me. Phone calls, emails, there were specific pieces of information I was looking for. And there were a few cases where we were not quite aligned with them. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's the board that votes the final vote, and the LAC chair keeps in line with what the board is doing. That's where the city association board president is also signing the letter. So there are two persons signing that.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can offer some context of my own, usually if there's a difference between position that we take and one that is taken by the League of Cities, it frequently has to do with a north-south divide statewide. But that seems to be a very common theme. All right, so we have here the calendar for the rest of this year. Should be very similar to what you'd likely do at the beginning of your own city council year to ratify a calendar for the upcoming year. You will note that we essentially tend to meet on the same day as the board because there's an enormous amount of overlap between members of the board and members of this committee. So you should generally expect that we will be meeting on the same day, earlier in the day, so that we can present what positions we are recommending to be as agile as possible without forcing everyone to come back here multiple times. There has been on occasion the need for us to move the date, usually to deal with something that is happening in Sacramento. It's uncommon, but generally speaking, you should expect that we will meet on the dates that we have established on the calendar. If you don't have a copy of this, we'll make sure that everybody does have one so that you can ensure that either you update your own calendar if you manage yours, or that you were able to hand it off to whoever handles scheduling for you. It's there for you, don't have to worry about it. And then if I can ask a question of President Klein, are we expected to always be in this room or?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have to go searching for it in this building, especially not upstairs. And then we can move on to the Sacramento legislative calendar.
Sure.
Okay. So Assemblymember Aaron's already alluded to this in his comments earlier. This calendar, which is available in your materials for today from Shelley, as she would have sent it to you, what, 4 o'clock?
Right.
Yeah. The next most important date that you will see is February the 21st. This is the deadline for legislators to introduce bills. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of the bills will have a lot of useful language for you. Many of them, if you were to run through a specific legislator or a particular key search term, will return bills that make seemingly nominal changes, sometimes called these spot bills, or intent bills. They will express simply a desire to make a change to state law, and you can expect that they will receive language later on in the course of the legislative cycle. The next most important set of days, if you can scroll downward, is in May, as there are dates for all of the bills to pass out of their house of origin in order to be able to stay alive and continue to move through the legislative process. We'll get to all of that in greater detail at a later point when we go through a full legislative update, but those are the 2 date points that you should be aware of right now, especially if you're interested in reaching out to one of your legislators. You know, they're on a deadline. They're very interested in hearing from you now if you want to put something forward, and some of them may put forward spot bills just for the sake of being able to reserve it. They are limited to 50 each. So, you know, if you're going over your limit, you're going to have to find someone else to go carry the bill that you're interested in. I'll return to sort of the baseline of what we're all here for. Some of this is creating stronger partnerships across the valley. So I'd actually like to go around the room at this point and make sure that everyone knows who everyone else is. And let you all introduce yourselves, when you were elected to office, or appointed if you were appointed, sort of what position you presently hold on your respective city councils so that we can address you correctly. And anything else that you'd like to offer about yourself in the space of about a minute. So we'll start with Councilmember Casey.
Wow. George Casey, elected this past November 5th. Represent the District 10, which is South San Jose, Almond Valley, Boston Valley. Attorney by trade. But it happy to be here.
Vice Mayor Moore.
Kitty Moore, I'm Vice Mayor of the City of Cupertino. My background is in civil engineering, land development, paralegal. Also have some environmental studies certificates. That's about it.
I'm Jared Delay, City of Montserrat, elected 2018, Vice Mayor this year. And my background is in engineering and I'm also an attorney. And I know a lot of the issues and things of this one.
Vice Mayor Moore.
Hey everyone, I am Rob Moore. I was elected in 2022. I'm currently the vice mayor of Los Gatos and relevant for this group. I just finished about a year working for Assemblymember Gail Pellerin as her senior field representative. I'm now going to be working for Supervisor Margaret Abe-Koga. But good ties with the legislature for our effective lobbying.
Hello, everyone. Carmen Montano, Mayor for the city of Milpitas. I've been in Milpitas for a very, very long time. Served on the school board for 8 years, several commission, and also have been reelected since my second term as mayor. Before that, I was vice mayor since 2012. So long history.
Anna Bybee, city council member for the city of Campbell. I was first elected in 2018 and re-elected to a second term in 2022. And I served on the city staff for 30 years prior to being elected to the council.
Hi everyone, I'm Mayor Ellen May, City of Mountain View. I got elected in 2018, re-elected in 2022. I think what's really of interest for me in LAC is I just finished serving as the immediate past president for the Peninsula Division for the League of California Cities. We had our third annual legislator address. So some of you may have come to that because we realized we wanted to get the legislators early. This was at the end of January to hear what bills they're going to start proposing, create the relationship, and then that dovetails nicely into the City Leaders Summit that League of California Cities hosts in April, where I was actually having a meeting earlier today about how we're going to be approaching our meeting with the legislators and how to be most effective. So I know that Cities Association was our co-host of this event again. And so I think joining together when possible on bills and different legislation has been something very powerful, as Councilmember Ohilia mentioned.
Tina Walia, City of Saratoga Council member. Elected in 2020 and re-elected uncontested in 2024. Served as mayor a couple of years ago in Saratoga. I was SVCE board chair last year and Legislative Action Committee chair here last year. And what I would like to say is both these organizations have helped me be a much more effective council person in my small city of Saratoga. What I'm very proud to say is what I mentioned earlier, writing those letters as LAC chair to say I'm writing on behalf of more than 1.8 million people. It amplified the voice of the 30,000 residents in my city, Saratoga. And working with each member here, whether we agree on every issue or not, doesn't matter. I learn from each one, and overall we serve every resident in the county. And I'm willing to support whichever bills the chair brings here based on the input from all the members.
Great argument by trending and trade, yeah.
Yes, my undergrad is in architecture and my graduate degrees are in architecture as well as business. I've done a bunch of things. I love serving the community.
Very good. So yes, to reintroduce myself, my name is J.R. Fruin. I sit on the Cupertino City Council, elected in 2022. In my day work, I am currently council chief of staff in Council District 1 in San Jose. I was previously in the same district as policy director, so policy is what I do all day, all night. It is the thing. I am, like George and Javed, an attorney by training. I maintain a small practice. And I just have to say thank you so much again, Jim, for the wonderful. Yeah.
Mayor Bazo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, my name is Greg Bozo. I'm the mayor of Gilroy. I was elected this past election season. I was sworn into office on December 9th. That's the first office I've ever been elected to. Prior to that, I've been involved in Gilroy for many years. I've lived here since I was a child. My family was involved with a lot of things. I've had a business here for 30 years. And this is the new chapter of my life, is the mayor of Gilroy.
Councilmember Stone?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Greer Stone. I'm a Palo Alto City Council member. I was first elected in 2020, was recently. Last year, I served as mayor, and during that time, at least in Palo Alto, our mayor is always the liaison to this committee and to the full board as well. So, but I really enjoyed my time so much working with all of you. And Tina, everything that you said is exactly how I felt during my time last year. It was such a rewarding experience. And so I asked our mayor to his alternative. So glad I'm able to be here with you tonight. And look forward to doing as much as I can as an alternate this year.
And thank you. I'm Shelley Serkin, the Executive Director of the Cities Association. I'm the one who sends you all those emails. But happy to be here.
Excellent. Right, before we, since this is an informational item, it doesn't require any action from the body, but I will take public comment on the agenda.
There's no one
We have nobody online, and I see nobody offering public comment in the room. So we will move on to item 3. Item 3 is going to be postponed as California Public Policy Group is not available tonight. And so we will move on to, as we've already addressed, item 4. Item 5, the Cities Association Board of Directors priorities. Amongst the various items that you got from Shelley earlier should be the score sheet from the Board of Directors meeting on various priorities that the Board of Directors is considering. And so what I would like to get from everyone here is an idea of what types of bills in each of the categories are listed that you would like us to try to watch for either support or opposition positions, as well as any ideas that you may have for ideas that you would want to see translated into a bill for one of our legislators to carry in the future. I will read out what we have from the priority setting so that you don't have to go and find it. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 categories that were considered by the board. And the votes were as follows. The top vote getter was public safety and disaster preparedness at 16 votes. Older adults at 12. Council governance at 10. Homelessness and housing at 9. Mental health at 8. Childcare at 7, and federal response at 3. So with that in mind, I'll open it up to anyone who has thoughts on the types of bills you would like others to monitor or something that you would like to suggest.
So I'll touch on a couple of them. One on public safety and disaster preparedness. I'm really curious to see how the legislature is planning on addressing the FAIR plan. My opinion is that you can't just throw money after it. The legislators have known for years that the FAIR plan was one major disaster away from sort of collapsing in on itself, and we have seen that disaster. So I think that's going to be super, super important because of the, in a lot of our communities that have places that are in the hillsides, the FAIR plan is hugely, hugely important. That's what, I don't know what percentage it is in Los Gatos, but a huge amount of people, thousands of people in Los Gatos are relying on the FAIR plan. And then also, I think funding for hardening, if that ever exists, we'll see. But I think that's important. And then I'm surprised federal response is so low, just because I'm really curious to see how the state responds to the feds trying to attack local funding. In the town of Los Gatos, we have several $1 million that are at stake, and I would imagine most cities have something similar to that. And I think on projects that affect all of us, like Silicon Valley for PTA, things like that, all super important. So those are two that I'm interested in.
Anyway. John, I think you're burning up space.
Yeah, well, I kind of addressed that, the fire safety issue, but that's on the tip of all of us. We need to come up with creative solutions on how to find pathways out of our cities. And we're still thinking about fire, but earthquake is a real reality, and it's almost due, unfortunately. So I think we need to really think about that also. Older adults is, the community is getting older, and so there are things to take care of for them, whether it's for fire safety or for other reasons. So that's good to see what companies come out of it.
Thank you. So a couple of comments. I think public safety, a lot of folks, they're really concerned about the rise of crime and also the disaster preparedness and all the fires that have been happening, floods and so forth. So I'm not surprised for it to get the majority of the votes. Homelessness and housing, I think that's together with older adults, because what's happening is a lot of our aging adults are having a hard time getting housing. And at the same time, a lot of them are at the verge of being homeless. So I think those two go hand in hand. The only problem with homelessness, I think the reason why it got a lower votes is because, yes, we want to put money in homelessness, but I think the way that the money is being spent is what is the big issue. I think the county is not really focusing on seniors. They're not focusing on the working poor. They're more focused on taking people off the streets. And that's, those are people that have mental illness, majority have mental illness, substance abuse, and of course the criminal element. But the county and state need to start focusing on seniors and the working poor, because those are the ones that have contributed to society in terms of their, working. So those two, I think they go hand in hand. Childcare, I think the reason why that didn't get too many votes, I think because right now you have a lot of parents would prefer staying home and bonding with their kids. The only reason they go to work is because they have to, economic reasons. But they would rather, any mother or father would rather bond with their children, so staying home. So those are my thoughts on that. Mental health, that goes with, I think, in my own personal opinion, I think we have a lot of mental health issues, the rise of mental health. I think a lot has to do with technology. A lot of our kids are they're being antisocial because they're on the cell phone a lot of time. And I think they need to have more social skills. So again, as I mentioned, homelessness and with older adults, that goes hand in hand. I'm not sure about council governance. I'm still not clear what that means. So somebody can explain what exactly was council governance?
I'm sure that Mayor Klein will
I know the
offer comments at the time.
All right,
Yeah.
so those are my thoughts. Thank you.
I would say, public safety would be, bills that center around that, as well as disaster preparedness would be ones that we would be looking at as far, and as also, protecting local funding and local control issues. And then, homeless and housing is, one of our council priorities, and tied into that, in my opinion, is mental health. There's a lot, I think those three things are pretty interconnected. So bills that would address that, would be important to us.
Vice Mayor Moore.
Thank you. Is there a time limit?
For today, the next meeting is at 7 p.m., but I'd like to give you all the opportunity to.
I mean, is it like 5 minutes, 3 minutes? So the city of Cupertino, we used to have a legislative review committee, and we have still around, but we have a 9-page legislative platform. So my first question would be, does anyone have a city that has a legislative review committee with a platform? And if you do, I would love to have those collected and shared amongst this committee. I think it would help. I'd also liked the board to have clarified when we did the priority setting activities, whether or not those were actually things that we would be supporting legislation or opposing legislation on. For instance, council governance seemed more about bringing someone in, and I can't recall the individual's name, to have a discussion about good council practice, and just kind of a seminar on that, as opposed to that being about supporting or opposing some legislation, because that doesn't really make sense. So I think in the future, we should maybe break this down a little bit into what the board's intention with the priorities is for us. When looking at the previous legislative platform, we had items like, they kind of fit into your public safety and disaster preparedness. So like for emergency preparedness, this is from 2022, support legislation that provides funding for local emergency preparedness planning, support legislation that provides reimbursement for costs associated with public safety power shutoffs and other emergency response efforts as examples. So if we're looking at this, it's like, well, I see these votes, the 16 votes, well, we need to perhaps narrow in on a few of these and then break down what kind of legislation we are in agreement for to support. Because it's a little bit vague, and one person's public safety might be fentanyl. What can we do there? Another person's might be, we want to support legislation about shoplifting and how kind of uncomfortable a Walgreens is now because everything's locked up. What can we do there? So I'd like to see a little more guidance towards our process here, and perhaps some agreement about how many of these topic areas we want to cover, and whether or not there's some appetite towards sharing our legislative platforms and perhaps forming a procedure for this committee moving forward. So I feel like we're kind of making things up as we go along, and that can be fine. But if we can kind of get a set process, I would appreciate that. Otherwise, we're going to be just talking about each one of these ideas without a goal. Thank you.
So I think that Councilmember Walia can respond to that, because we're at a certain point here at the moment where the board hasn't yet set all of the priorities that we will have, or the specific points of it. The purpose in this conversation today is to sort of garner some idea where people sit, what things you think are important, so that when we report them back out to the board, there is some additional voice that is there from people who are appointed to this body, because many of them are different people from the ones who sit on the board. But I think that Councilmember Walia has some comments as well.
So I'll just quickly touch upon some of your questions there, Vice Mayor Moore. As I mentioned earlier in the process, and something which in the interest of time, I did not even point out, the pace at which the bills going through the legislature goes, and I don't have the experience, but there are a couple of people sitting here who have a lot more experience with that. That is so rapid that the meeting date set here at Legislative Action Committee is one data point where the LAC committee members from different cities find a platform to respond to and recommend positions to the board on some bills. Each of those categories, I also mentioned that the LAC chair has the prerogative to choose the areas and try to find ways to align perhaps with some of those. Not each of those will get covered in the interest of time. I certainly could not. I have Vice Mayor Moore from Los Gatos, who knows there were phone conversations we had. He had some very good viewpoints, some bills he wanted me to support earlier. Or not support, but to bring to the LAC earlier in the process, in the calendar year, in the legislative calendar year, it did not add up. Because I, as LAC chair, working with the executive committee, could see bringing them earlier did not quite add up to be able to best represent all the cities in the county, as well as to see where the bills were in Sacramento. To have a very defined process, I personally learned, I had no background in this, I like to have things spelled out exactly like you, very clear set of expectations and process. That was not going to work. So in some ways, it has to be, it does not make it as you go along, but you move forward with as much as you possibly can. To respond to your council governance thing, Mayor Klein will address that as board president. When we look at it as board, not everything is going to be exactly in alignment. And yes, what his focus was the events. That perhaps may end up being not an area we focus on in the bills. For example, last year, I struggled to find bills for older adults that had relevance in our county. So clearly not much came out of that. I was able to pull some bill on fentanyl related that could help people in the county, maybe not in my own city. But what I did was I reached out to our captain who was able to pull information and brief me what was happening across the county in terms of law enforcement. So that is, if this body ends up looking at every single bill, we will not be able to be effective. That's why going back to the process that I talked of earlier, once the tentative list of bills goes out by Monday, which is 3 days prior to the LAC committee meeting, even in that 3-day window, at times bills will change in terms of what has happened. I'm going to stop right there. I just wanted to share that and just very quickly touch upon the areas which I expect the bills to not just represent my city, but I'm guessing even in the county. Public safety rises to the top for my city. I have said this numerous times, both earthquake and high fire hazard zones in my city. And let us not forget, if something happens in my city or in Montezurino or Los Gatos, the whole county is going to get impacted if there is a really big disaster. I don't have to emphasize that. We are all seeing what happened in Los Angeles. The FAIR plan, I agree with Vice Mayor Moore from Los Gatos. That's a huge issue. I can share offline the downfall that is already happening from that in my city right now. Added to that, my city has 22 builders remedy projects. Are we going to see bills on that? Not really, but quite a few of those builders remedy projects are in the hills, exactly where we should not be increasing development, and those development projects are not meeting any of the zoning standards, which will exacerbate the public safety and the disaster challenges, disaster preparedness, or addressing the disaster preparedness, or addressing in case there is a disaster. So those are the areas I would like to focus on, and I agree with pretty much everything else that has been said earlier. And I'm open to whatever gets addressed. I think at the end of the day, this committee does a phenomenal job, whatever we do. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Very good. Councilmember Stone?
Thank you. I don't, aligned with the desire to focus on public safety and disaster preparedness. I know many of us sit at the base of the foothills and the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I think we continue to get lucky every single year that we're not seeing a major disaster like we just saw in Southern California. When we had the Santa Cruz fires just a few years ago, I know Palo Alto was spared because we got lucky with a shift in the winds. So we've been doing everything we can to prepare and mitigate, but sources, I mean, we're just not going to level. So glad there seems to be agreement about Alto, and I would imagine all of us is on the house and the build, especially affordable housing. I mean, Palo Alto, we reach our market rate housing quota every single housing cycle, and I think the state does as well. But we always fall short on our affordable housing piece. That's going to require significant public dollars to invest in, and we're trying to just get a sense of how much that's going to cost us if we were to be able to get to our affordable housing numbers, which is over 3,000 affordable units. And what we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars that, of course, we don't have. So we're looking at ways to be able to fund that. We really need help from the state on that piece. And then just on the builder's remedy, we have a few. I know we're not as bad as Saratoga and some others that are really getting hit hard. There's a massive project that has been proposed at the old Sunset Magazine building just next door to us in Menlo Park. And so I think this is an issue that voters are going to start to care about really soon once some of these really kind of these projects go up that are just so out of character for our communities. I think that's when the public's going to start paying attention. I'd like to see us get on board and be a little more aggressive there. And then on council governance, I mean, I see a big piece of that is the independence of cities and city councils and our right to be able to have local control. And I've noticed every single year the state chips away at our local control. And it just seems to getting more and more aggressive, and this paternalistic view that the state seems to have, and this cookie cutter approach that they give to so many of their mandates. I mean, what's happening in Palo Alto is so different than Mountain View, is so different than Cupertino, is so different than Saratoga. I think it's just a nonsensical approach to me. So I'd like to see us really advocate and pushing back against these mandates that just continue to strip it away from us. So those are my thoughts. Sorry, my lights keep going out here.
And then Councilor Mayor Paulson?
Yeah, two things. Mental health and homelessness, for me, they go together. I think they do for a lot of people. But I'm not sure what type of legislation ideas are going on right now, but I know at one point there was some talk of involuntary hospitalization and guardianship and things like that. And I think if there's some bills like that coming along, I'd love for us to talk about those. And jumping back on housing, it seems to me that it would behoove all of us in Santa Clara County to have a unified voice when it comes to these unfunded mandates when it comes to housing, because we're all having the same problems, and some of them, like in our case, is that the amount of workload that comes along with some of these new unfunded mandates is just devastating on our community development departments. And there's talk with just in our own city council, we were doing our strategic planning just yesterday. And some of our other council members were saying that, while we understand the need for housing and things like that, it feels like we need a unified voice against some of the stuff coming out of the state about how impactful these unfunded mandates are. And I believe that I think the folks at the state level are starting to hear, and it can't hurt for them to hear it even more. We had a meeting with our assembly representative, Rivas, who most of you know is the Speaker of the Assembly, and he's hearing us about. He says it before we do sometimes. He knows that they push a lot of these unfunded mandates, but he knows how hard it is for us. So, in review, anything on homeless and mental health with guardianship and involuntary hospitalization, and banding together for us to unify our voice about how challenging unfunded mandates are at the state, especially when it comes to housing.
Well, with that, we are coming to the end of item 5 and the rest of our agenda. I will draw your attention to another insert in your set of documents, which is the life cycle of legislation in Sacramento, very conveniently crafted by Senator Faiso and his staff. It is quite a Byzantine process, but if you don't want to just follow, a calendar, this is a much more organic means for being able to figure out what's going on, where you are in the process. It's helpfully color coded to know which house something to be in at what point in the legislation. I will open the floor now to public comment, if there is any.
Public
Comment online, any public comment in the room? Seeing none, I will close out item 5 and we will adjourn. Thank you.
Mayor Basso and Councilmember Stone, you should have separate links for the board meeting.
Yeah, I think we do. I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jolly, did you recently send that?
I did. I sent it at the same time as the board one.
Okay, I'll try to find it.
The Zoom information on the agenda.